Hello everyone, my name is Leonardo Nogueira. I'm the head of connectors engineering for Avalara in Brazil. And today I'm going to talk to you about how you can get your integration ready for the electronic invoicing using Avalara. In our agenda for this session, we will first take a look at what electronic invoicing is, in fact. Second, I'm going to show you a typical integration workflow for the electronic invoicing process. And finally, I'll show you how you can get started with our APIs for electronic invoicing in 3 steps. At the end of the session, there will be dedicated time for Q&A, so please take note of your questions. And with that, let's get started. So first, the definition. Electronic invoicing. Electronic invoicing is the process of sending, receiving, and storing of physical documents that represents a commercial transaction in a digital format. This document can then be used for compliance or automation purposes according your use case. Behind of that trend, let's say there is a very real scenario in which the tax authorities adopt what we call the digital transformation paradigm. And what it means that more frequently than ever, tax authorities have the capability to first be an active party of a commercial transaction. They can also audit those transactions as they happen in real time or near real time. And third, there is an immensely increase in efficiency in the tax collection process. The electronic invoice also is what we call a core feature of most modern applications. The electronic invoice is a very rich set of data, and this data can be used in many automation purposes or processes, from logistics to AP to AR and much more. For instance, it enables real-time analysis of transactions coming from vendors or to customers that can be used as decision points or business decisions endpoints. It also enables what we call a touchless integration process between the business partners involved in that transaction and even with the tax authorities. It's also important to say that it is a global trend. So we support many regions globally with our solutions. A few examples of regions adopting the electronic invoicing. India with India GST, Brazil, since early 2000s, no goods can move without an electronic invoice attached to it. And even the European Union, with countries like Hungary, Spain, Portugal, Italy, adopting some version or some format of the electronic invoicing. What that means to you, a developer, that means that if you have international customers, very soon you will be required to adopt or to integrate electronic invoices in your process or in your integrations. And you can benefit from Avalara APIs. So what is a typical integration workflow for our APIs? So let's say that you are here on the left side, a supplier is starting that process. That process typically is started by the source system, the ERP in general. And the ERP triggers the creation of the electronic invoicing after all the tax calculation process has already happened in the ERP, and they have a document stored representing that invoice. Then the ERP can call our APIs through your integration using a post verb in our transactions endpoint, passing that information to Avalara. Avalara Cloud will then receive that information and negotiate the communication with the proper tax authority. The tax authority will authorize that transaction or deny that transaction and digitally sign that communication process. Avalara will receive that information, that response from the tax authority in a payload response that can then be stored as an XML file in the search system, the ERP in this case. In parallel, when that transaction is authorized, or just after that transaction is authorized, the suppliers can move the goods, let's say, with supporting documents like the PDF for that transaction, or even the XML file. On the consumer side, we can have different use cases for consumption of that information. So let's say buyer one has an async fetch process via PubSub to consume all those electronic invoices created against him. Let's say buyer two has an async process through an EDI or VAN, a value-added network, to recover all those documents. Even an end-user consumer or a SOHO business without the support of complex systems can benefit from that, receiving the same information via an email with a PDF or an attached XML file. Okay? But how can you get started with that process? This flow seems complex, but in basically 3 easy steps, you can accomplish the creation of an electronic invoicing with Avalara. And to do that, first, you get an authorization from our API. You will call the post verb to a auth method of our API. Second, you can create an invoice, again, calling the post method to a transactions endpoint, passing all the information for this invoice. And third, you can retrieve all those documents through a get method to our invoices endpoint. So with that, let me switch to Postman and I can show you a quick demo on how to accomplish that. In this Postman collection, I have 3 steps, each one calling a different method from our API. So on first step, I have a get authorization method. It is a post call to the auth method of our API. I'm here working in a sandbox environment that you as a developer can use to call our APIs. In this environment, I have created an auth token environment variable, okay, that will store my token. So let's call the API and get this token. Okay, I have here a new token. Let me copy it. Copy. And I will update my environment variable. Okay. With that, I can now call the second step or the second method of our example. I can create a post or I can create a document using the post method to our transaction method, passing in the body the payload representing the electronic invoice. I mentioned before that the electronic invoice is a very rich set of data. And let me show what I mean by that. For instance, in this transaction, I have the federal tax ID for this company. I have the state tax ID for the sample company. Okay, I can see that this company is a taxpayer. I have all the full locations for that company, where the company is established with a full address. I can see where is the establishment of that company also located with the full address information. I know that's a transaction for goods. In some regions, goods and services, they have different formats or different methods for the electronic invoicing. We take care of both. I have also a very important information that is the document code. That's typically a unique number representing that transaction in the ERP system, okay? So let me change it here to a different number, let's say 94, ending 94. Okay, I know that this is also a transaction of the type sale. Okay, um, I have all the transport information like the freight mode, if it is with taxes included or not, if it is a transportation. I have all the installment information with all the payments information for that transaction. I have also, let's say, the bill number that's also controlled by the ERP system. And of course, I have all the line items representing all the goods or all the services rendered by that transaction, okay? On the line, I have, let's say, I have just one line item here, but I have the quantity or the number of items, I have the unit price, and I have, for instance, the total amount. Of course, we can have also all the tax information here that was previously calculated by Avalara API, or we can also make the calculation of those taxes on the fly, okay? With all that, let me change the number of this document. Let's say I'm going to issue now the number 20. That's the invoice number. The invoice number typically is a sequential number, also controlled by the source system, in this case, an ERP, okay? And it is supposed to be unique. Okay, so with that, let me call the post transactions method. Avalara will negotiate with the tax authorities, and if everything is okay, I'm going to receive a status 200. With the same payload that I passed as the request for this transaction. But one important information here is the NF access key. If I can show you here, let me find it. Here, the NF access key. That's also a unique number that was created by the tax authority. That means this transaction was digitally signed by the tax authority, and that's the unique number representing that transaction with the tax authority. With that, I can copy that unique number or unique key and use it in step 3. Step 3 is where I can get that document digitally signed just passing the key. To do that, I call the get method to the invoices method of our API. I will put here my unique key, okay? And I just forgot to mention, that's the Brazilian version of our API, okay? So the payload information that you saw here is the information that's typically required by a electronic invoicing process in Brazil, okay? So let me get, yeah, it worked. Status 200. I see that it was an authorized electronic invoice. I have a protocol number. I have the authorization date and time for that transaction. And I have access key that I passed as parameter. The important information in this payload of the response, in this case, is the node PDF and the node XML. In the node PDF, we do have a base64 representation for an invoice that you can use it to render that PDF format in your system, okay? But you have also a link to direct download the same PDF rendered by Avalara, okay? You can download it here. In the XML node of the payload, you will see the same base64, but now to the XML file, okay, that was digitally signed, and also a link for a direct download of the same file. With that, you can use that information to automate your process, not only for creation of electronic invoices, but also to retrieve electronic invoices that were created by the Avalara API. With that, let's move to questions. Thank you.